Hi, I'm Bethany. I'm 18 years old. I'm studying for a degree in politics and sociology, and I have chronic pain because I have an invisible illness known as a non-radiographic axial spondyloarthritis. I'm really lucky I got that out in one go. So a non-radiographic axial spondyloarthropy is a condition split into 3 different sections. So the condition is non-radiographic, meaning it doesn't show up on scans. Generally, a non-radiographic condition is one that doesn't show up on X-rays, but mine doesn't show up on MRIs either, meaning I was undiagnosed for almost 6 years. It is an axial condition, meaning it affects your axial skeleton, which essentially is from here up, but my condition also affects my pelvis and my legs. And a spondyloarthritis is an umbrella term for a group of inflammatory arthroses. So what I basically just said is I could have saved you a lot of time by telling you I have arthritis. But where's the fun in that? So chronic pain, more generally speaking, is officially defined as any pain that lasts for 3 months or longer. But that is ridiculously reductionist and overly simplistic. Chronic pain is far more than just pain. It is disabling. It is isolating. It has bad effects on your mental health, as many studies have shown that there is a positive correlation between the amount of chronic pain suffered, the length of the chronic pain, and the severity of depression suffered. Chronic pain impacts your social life, your work, your school, your physical state, obviously. Chronic pain is more than just pain. So the chronic pain that I'm talking about today is generally invisible. There are conditions where chronic pain is visible, but the vast majority are invisible illnesses. To define it a bit more specifically, an invisible illness is an illness that can't be seen to the naked eye. So I can walk on here and none of you know that I'm disabled, but I am. So when you have an invisible illness, you have to come out of the medical closet because no one knows that you're disabled. There are millions of ways to do it and everyone does it differently. But there are generally 3 reactions that you get. The first is just a very awkward noise, which generally resembles a, oh, okay, and then a sad face, and then you just both feel uncomfortable. It's not that great. But more than just showing that the person you're telling is uncomfortable with your specific illness, it resembles the fact that society in general is uncomfortable with disability, with long-term illness. When you tell somebody you're unwell, chronically, you're telling them that you're different to a lot of people in society. You're telling them that you're not normal or not average, and oftentimes that's kind of hard to cope with. The second reaction, which you often get when you are young or when you have a joint problem, is that you are just too young to be ill. And this is a really annoying response, but I'm going to say it's aloud. On one condition, and that is if you have a very personal connection to the overlord of chronic illness and disability, and you can get my condition reversed until I'm of a more suitable age. But everyone that's told me that I'm too young so far hasn't had such a connection, so they're banned. And this again shows that when you have a chronic illness, when you have an invisible illness, it doesn't fit into what a disabled person should be. I should be 80 to have arthritis, but unfortunately, I'm not. I'm 18. And carrying on from that, another very similar reaction is that I don't look sick. And I understand that often when people tell me that, it's actually meant as a compliment. But all it's telling me is actually I shouldn't be ill because I don't look ill. Because I don't fit into the very strict criteria of what you should be to be disabled. These reflect major stereotypes that are interwoven into our social structures that dictate the lives of those who are disabled. They tell you that unless you are visibly ill, of a certain age, or look a certain way, then you're allowed to be disabled. But if you're not any of those 3, you're not disabled. As I said, these stereotypes are held by millions of people in society. And it means that you have to prove yourself, whether it's having a massive badge that says I am disabled, whether it's by maybe walking with a more profound gait, whether it's by having a walking stick or a mobility aid, or going to doctors and saying, please believe me that my back pain is actually bad and I promise it's not growing pains. Whether it's telling friends when you can't go out to a social event that it's because you're ill or you're in pain and not because you don't like them or because you're lazy. Whatever it is, you spend a long time proving you're ill because people just won't believe you. I would love to say that these stereotypes are only held by people who have a very limited experience of disability, be it a first or second-hand experience. I can't say that. When I was 16, I was about 4 years into my chronic illness journey, and I went to see a rheumatologist, which is a joint doctor. I was at a period in my life where I was undiagnosed, I was very sick, and I was seeing a ridiculous amount of doctors on a very regular basis to try and figure out what was wrong with me. So I sat down in front of this doctor and I gave him my pre-rehearsed spiel about I got sick when I was this age and then my pain spread here and then I tried this medication. And he asked me the normal doctor questions and then he kind of sat back and thought, and that is where the dangerous bit came in. He told me that I had a pain processing problem. And I was, after I heard that, euphoric for like 2 seconds. Because as I said, I was 16 and I was undiagnosed. I'd suffered from very severe chronic pain for 4 years. And suddenly this fight that I was having against this faceless illness was suddenly recognised, appreciated, and had a name, which made me a bit stronger. I had one up on this entity that was fighting me. I had a pain processing problem. So then I had to ask him what a pain processing problem is. And in the words of this doctor, a pain processing problem is when you experience the pain that everyone experiences because you're human. And everyone experiences pain, so that kind of made sense. But a toxic mentality that you hold means that you focus so much on this pain, it gets worse and worse and worse because of the way you think about it. My pain was all in my head, according to the doctor, that had met me for 5 minutes and didn't know anything about the chronic pain I had or how it affected me. I would love to say that the stereotypes held by that doctor really only affect me. I've taken the burden for everyone else suffering from a chronic illness, and nobody else is going to have to see a doctor who treats them with that little respect or recognition. But I can't say that. And that is why I'm here today, to explain to all of you what it is like to be ill when you kind of shouldn't be, when people think you shouldn't be. There are very many ways to combat the stereotypes and to fight the views that are held by people that are frankly oppressive and really change your life for much worse. One of the ways to fight these stereotypes is to tell doctors where they can shove their pain processing problems. Doesn't work that well. A more productive thing to do is to educate yourself on what a chronic illness is, what chronic pain is, and understanding it's a lot more than just pain. And understanding the stereotypes that affect people every day and how deeply interwoven they are into our society. I mentioned a bit about growing pains. When you're young and have had chronic pain, it doesn't matter how long for, doctors generally will always ask you, come back in a month because it's probably growing pains. It's not growing pains. And these are the type of things, growing pains, the wonderful doctor I mentioned before, shows the things that we have to fight against daily. But with education and with understanding, even if it's just you, it will start to change the lives of other people. Because suddenly this fight that they're having, that they have to fight on their own, doesn't become this lonesome battle anymore. If you can understand and start to appreciate that if you're not in a wheelchair, you can still be disabled, that if you're not 80 years old, you can still have arthritis, and that people of many ages suffer many invisible illnesses, you are 10 steps closer to making millions of lives easier. Education and understanding will eradicate the isolation that people with invisible illnesses experience on an everyday basis. You can educate yourself by watching talks like me, thank you very much, by reading things online, by talking to people you know who suffer from conditions like arthritis, fibromyalgia, Crohn's disease, Perthes disease, etc. If you start talking, if you start conversations, the understanding will spread. And as I said, that eradicates isolation. It means the invisibility cloak that is forced on us when we realise we are disabled when we shouldn't be, that invisibility cloak will be ripped off us. The stitches of these stereotypes will be snipped. And the fight that we have every single day will become so much more visible and so much more easy to fight, because we will no longer be fighting a one-man battle. Thank you.